Okay, we're back. Okay, so what we're gonna do today is kind of an overview. How many of y'all have been on a bike grid ride before? Like almost folks here? Sick, cool. How many of y'all just showed up because you got mad at biking stuff? Okay, cool, sick. I mean, me too. That's why I'm here, right? So a little bit of context on me. What's up, friends? Find a spot wherever you can. There's a chair over there. There's some chairs over there. Hey, what's up? So a little bit of context on me. I joined Bike Grid now about 3 months after it started, like way too long ago now. Mostly because I got mad at the city's bike infrastructure and the pace specifically it's growing at. One of the big frustrations for me has been this the fact that at the current speed we're going at, we're going to have meaningful bike infrastructure by the time I die. Right? And that sucks. And that's just unrealistic for the world we're trying to build. And this is one of the reasons that Bike Grid exists. Bike Grid exists because we know there's an answer to Chicago's lack of safe streets infrastructure. We just need our city officials and our electeds to actually give a damn and make it happen. And that's why Bike Grid now exists. That's why I hope you are all in this room. And so what we're going to talk about is how we got here, what the grid even is, the bills that we have to actually build the grid and make it real, what next year looks for us, what going forward looks for us, how to get involved, and what getting involved actually looks like. Because the biggest thing for me is this is a movement that takes quite literally all of us to make happen. There's seats if you want to find some seats over there. There's some stools over there. There's also extra chairs upstairs we can steal from them if you want to. And how to get involved to actually make this happen. The big thing is that fundamentally at its core, we can't make this happen by ourselves. We want to actually have a city that has the bike infrastructure we know we deserve. It's going to take all of us to actually make that happen. And that's one of the reasons we're here. So let's start by explaining what the heck the Bike Grid even is. Were any of y'all involved in 2022 when Bike Grid started? I was we got 3 or 4 folks, right? Sick. That rules that all y'all are here post that. So Bike Grid was initially founded back in 2022 with a kind of a goal of making the city more bike safe. We were founded predominantly as a direct action organization. Basically, we're really tired of this slow, compromising, oh, cool, we got half a lane here. We fought for 2 years. We managed to get a quarter mile there, half a mile there. Because at that pace, it's not going to happen. So Bike Grid was founded as a direct action organization to apply the kind of pressure that it's going to take to get the infrastructure that we deserve. 2023, we started focusing much more heavily on municipal elections. That was 4 years ago, and it worked amazingly. Shout out Charna, who was really involved in that effort. One of the things I did was we came out of that election with 18 elected aldermen that had endorsed the Bike Grid conceptually. Both mayoral candidates in the runoff endorsed the Bike Grid. And we thought, hell yeah, we did it. We made it. We got it. And then we got to 2024. There's 1 seat over there. There's also more seats upstairs we can steal and bring down. Okay, cool. We kind of had this moment we realized in 2024 after the election, we're like, cool. So the Bike Grid though, you're going to do that, right? You all said you're going to do it. So it's going to happen, right? And then we realized that we were going to have to make it happen. So 2024, we kind of took a step back, focused on making the kind of organizational structure that actually took this to make this real. Bike Grid was initially just kind of an amorphous blob of organizing. And one of the things this meeting is about is trying to take that even a step further and making it a lot more structured and more real and more functional. So we started some kind of semi-formal organizing structure. That was the steering committee, to which myself, Nick, Charna, Sahal, and Alyssa are members of. 2025 is when we actually wrote the legislation for the grid, because we realized that, again, the aldermen that said they wanted it weren't going to do it, so we had to make that happen. So we wrote the legislation for the grid and began organizing around that. This year was a pivot toward the state legislation because city council vibes are bad. And so we started making a state legislature version of the bill to try to pass that through the state legislature. And that kind of brings us to what we're doing today. So what does this actually look like? Bike Grid now kind of typically organizes around 3 or 4 big buckets of things. We are founded predominantly as a direct action organization. What I think that means is for often too long, we listen to the views of the loud folks that think that everyone should be able to drive 60 miles an hour down every tiny pedestrian street, right? And because we listen to those folks because that's the cultural norm that we've established, that we are this car brain society that listens to those folks. And we think that we should listen to the people that are actually biking and pedestrians around our city because we know that those folks are a pretty large portion of our city. What that looks like for us is things like protest rides. That looks like bike jams. How many of y'all have been on a bike jam with us? Good chunk of folks. Hell yeah, right? Bike jams are protest rides. They're ways of us taking up space and forcing people in power to actually listen to us, right? It's a way of like explaining like, hey, we are here. We deserve space and safety too. We have marshal trainings, right? Because running bike rides across the city takes a lot of people. Not only our bike rides, but we also want to support the broader bike community that exists, right? We run a lot of bike rides. There's some spots over there if you want. Yeah, cool. We run a lot of bike rides, and we know lots of other groups run bike rides. So we host marshal trainings to teach folks how to keep rides safe. We run educational rides. We call those Tour de Grid rides, where you bike around and talk about the poor, good, and the good, bad, and ugly of bike infrastructure in the city. I'm sure everyone in the room has, when they think about bad bike infrastructure, everyone has the lane they're thinking of later. Well, see, this would be a question when you get to breakouts later on. For me, for example, my lane that I hate the most is Damon southbound on the corner of Damon and Roosevelt going southbound. That's where I'm going to die one day, right? And like talking about that infrastructure is a really helpful way of helping educate folks on where those gaps are in the first place. And then fun stuff, because also biking is fun. Fundamentally, Bike Grid is founded as an organization that we want to stop existing. Right? We want to pass the bike grid, and I want to go on rides with my friends. Right? This organization exists to get the infrastructure we need because I want to stop organizing and just go ride bikes around the city with my friends. And that's the fundamental goal of the organization. So first of all, if you're bored on Sunday, come ride with us to the Red Stars game. It's going to be sick. Stars, not Red Stars. Or Fish Club, right? We also have done like memorial rides in the past. I know many of y'all were on the Riley O'Neill ride. We've run other memorial rides in the past as well. Die-ins and jams like that are another common tactic we've used as a way of, again, highlighting what's actually happening and the gaps in our infrastructure we have now. And of course, political advocacy, right? We introduced our bill both in the state legislature this year, getting to go up and lobby folks. We had a majority of state legislators in Chicagoland support the bill. But again, we didn't get it passed, but that's a conversation for later. What is the bike grid, right? At its core, the bike grid represents our goal to create 450 miles of safer streets in Chicago, AKA 10% of city streets. We know that roughly 10% of Chicagoans bike on a semi-regular basis, and we think 10% of city roads should be bike safe. For me, this was the compelling argument that brought me to Bike Grid, because it's a really compelling, easy to understand case for why the grid is so important. Oftentimes we hear car drivers be like, oh my God, every lane is turning to bikes. Cool, I want 10%. I want 10% of your roads, right? I'm not even saying 10% of roads where cars can't be, just 10% of roads that are designed for pedestrians and cyclists. For me, this feels like an attainable ask, and which is why Bike Grid was such a compelling vision. But when we're talking about roads, we don't mean like slapping a painted lane on Western and be like, oh, cool, look at that. No, we need like actual real bike infrastructure. So this includes like lightly traveled routes, like residential roads and side streets. Or if we're gonna be on arterials, we need like the actual protection that arterials deserve. This approach is not only affordable, because like concrete costs just stupid amounts of money. It also is practical, right? We've seen the way that we can, if cities want to build bike infrastructure quickly, they can. We've just chosen in Chicago to not prioritize that year after year after year. We've seen cities like Montreal and Paris build infrastructure quickly, at pace, and affordably. We know it can be done. We just need our city leaders to actually prioritize doing it. All right, the pitch is simple. 10% of Chicagoans bike as a major form of transportation, 10% of city roads should be bike safe. What is a grid street actually, right? So at our core, the bike grid for us means speed softened neighborhood greenways, right? At its core. Mostly because we know that a lot of cyclists are scared. I think not about the people like me. I'm an idiot. I'll bike just about anywhere, right? But I think a lot about my friends and my wife and my students, right? Where for them, biking is scary. Even if I put protected infrastructure on a major road, it's still scary. There's lots of cars. Those cars are moving fast. We want to have the least amount of conflict points with cars as we can, and that's why our preference is for speed softened neighborhood greenways. Now, that doesn't mean slapping some green paint on a road and calling it a day, right? We need actual speed softening, actual infrastructure that slows cars down, actual infrastructure that prevents cars from using this as a cut through, right? So that includes things like diverters, RIP to that one, right? That includes things like bump outs, raised crosswalks, traffic circles, the kind of infrastructure that we know slows cars down, makes people feel more comfortable. Take any of your friends that are bike curious on a ride, put them on Damon or put them on Oakley, and you'll see the difference in comfortability for them riding, right? That's the goal of the bike grid, is to get more people on bikes, and we do that through speed softened neighborhood greenways. That being said, sometimes you can't do that, right? There's places I want to go that you can't do that on. There's bridges I need to cross. There's places I got to go, and that's fine. So in places like that where we can't find those ways to build those roads, that's when we want to have protected arterials, right? If I'm going to have more traffic conflict, I'm going to have more of that conflict with cars, then that demands that we have the infrastructure that supports that safety. So if I'm going to need to cross over the bridge, I'll cross over the river, and there's going to be a lot of cars there, you best believe I want protection to make that safe for people crossing over, right? So for corridors, when that is built on major arterials, we want protected or grade separated bike lanes, signalized intersections, bump outs, the kinds of stuff that not only slows cars down, but separates us from that car traffic in the first place. Also, it's got to be a grid, right? Like, it's got to be a grid. We live in Chicago, grid system exists. The fact that we exist in this place right now where like the bike infrastructure we currently have is so segmented is one of the problems. It's really hard to get someone on their bike when the bike lane exists and it's nice and safe for 80% of the ride, and then it dumps you off on a road where it's suddenly no longer safe again. And this happens all over Chicago. Everywhere you look, you see that bike infrastructure where it stops and starts just at some whims of a ward boundary, right? And that can't exist. If we want to have actual mode shift to get people on their bikes more, we have to have a system where I can just understand, like, it's easy to navigate Chicago as a driver. It should be as easy to navigate Chicago as a cyclist, right? And that's why we need to have an actual real grid system. None of this like piecemeal, a lane here, a lane there that's not connected in the right place. None of that stuff. Importantly, it's none of this, right? Right? No sharrows, no just painted lanes in the middle of nowhere, no disconnected streets that are connected from nothing else. No, when we slap a greenway on something, but then don't actually change the infrastructure on the street and just expect because we have a greenway there that like cars are suddenly going to magically slow down, right? If we're going to build the bike grid, it has to have the actual infrastructure that keeps people safe. Otherwise, people are going to see, oh my God, it's a bike lane. They're going to ride on it and nothing's going to happen, right? We see this happen all the time. It's really hard when Google Maps thinks something's a bikeway, puts you on there, and it's just a share or a painted lane. That's the fastest way to get someone to stop riding their bike, right? So this is what we think the bike grid is not. And so far too often, when the city talks about bike infrastructure, we are often, they can probably find us, far too often when people talk about bike infrastructure, then the city will often tout the numbers. Like, oh my God, we built hundreds of miles of lanes. The majority of that are sharrows and unprotected painted lanes on major arterials that are not safe for anybody, right? I think Nick, do you have the number off the top of your head for like the percentage of the actual amount of lanes that we think are real? Yeah, right? Like the vast majority of lanes that the city claims are bike safe are not bike safe. And we all know that. And that actually makes things more dangerous. It means when we have people that are more scared or more hesitant riders and they come out, right? That's when they come out because they see on Google Maps, it says, oh my God, it's a bike lane. And they get there and it's not safe. That stops them from riding in the next time, right? Also, it's got to be now, right? This for me is even more important, right? Like I've been in Chicago for almost 8 years now, right? I plan on living in Chicago for the foreseeable future. I plan on raising, oh my God. Well, it'd be that way sometimes. I don't know. I plan on raising my kids in Chicago, right? And I want to have the bike infrastructure that would let my kids bike to school before they go to college, right? So oftentimes we've seen that when we put mandates on the city to actually build infrastructure, they do it. You can look at New York City, who put in bike mandates and have been meeting targets that are vastly higher than Chicago has. While Chicago has been declining in the amount of miles they're building, other cities are increasing, right? So what that means for us is when we look at our legislation, it talks about the city ramping up production And we would like the grid to be done in like 8 to 10 years, right? Which we think is a very feasible number to give the city, right? Because back to this whole thing of I would like to see the grid exist before I die. And at the pace we're going and the pace of actual protected lanes, I want to say it's like 2070 something that the city would actually finish the grid as it currently stands. And I think that's patently unacceptable. When we have a city road budget the size we do, and we have a cycling population the size we do, we think the city should give a shit about us. Now, to talk about that, let me talk about how we're actually going to make this happen. I'm going to bring up another steering committee member, Nick Hunter.
Thanks everyone. As Chris said, my name's Nick Hunter. I'm one of the members on the steering committee, and we have bills. So we started by working on the city level. I wrote a municipal ordinance, a very big bill, both. It covered what actually getting the bike grid and also trying to fix up the municipal code. A lot of sections haven't been updated since 1990. So there's a lot of things that we could do. So that's everything from how far we are allowing dumpsters to be permitted at intersections so that cyclists can actually see around. That is things like trying to stand up an EMS bike pilot for big city events when it's hard to get an ambulance through. But we started there. Under the ordinance, we would the bike grid would be completed by 2033 at this point, sort of ramping up how many hours or how many miles happen per year. The good news is cities already kind of met their first year requirement, so it's not like we're putting a huge burden of work on them in 2027. But we pretty quickly got to we realized, as Chris said, it's a bad time to try and do anything bike oriented. Unfortunately, the Archer bike lanes have sort of scared alders. Even though that was not only about bike lanes, that was also about a major water upgrade. So it was a lot of things wrapped into one. But as I said, it covered a lot of things. So that part one actually creates that connected network of state streets. So a big important part is that not every road needs the same type of solution. So you can't design it in a way that says we need to put protected bike lanes everywhere. We have a grid system. When you actually try to plan it out and go across the city, it's quite disconnected, but we recognize that. So we basically made a menu system that sort of ran on points, and you had to get a certain amount of points per every half mile. Just to bring in that old flexibility. And then as part two has said, it makes those minimal adjustments, those small additions. So it's everything, like I said, from changing dumpsters from being allowed within 10 feet of an intersection to being allowed within 30 feet of an intersection. So the small things that really help you get around your city, sort of like micro connections. So the reason we put this all as one big bill is we looked at Plow the Sidewalks, and Plow the Sidewalk works in two things. It was to pass the ordinance to do Plow the Sidewalks, and then it had to take a second vote to get the funding, and that's not how we want to go about that. We learned that because of our ordinance, they have to spend about the first 18 months actually planning it, and then they start to do the implementation. So we only do the planning, and then we come back, we see what the plan is, and then we try to pass it. It's a very major fault point in actually trying to pass something. But as I said, it ended up being a bad time to all right, I'm not gonna skip ahead. So we're gonna go over our math. So currently we think there are about 17 safe yeses, which is not enough to actually pass our bill. We need a majority, so we need 26 of those. So you see that there's 23 of them in our need to convince and we're talking to. And those are people who might be supportive, could be supportive, but we're not sure where they currently stand, but they definitely aren't fully against because they do allow bike lanes to be built in their neighborhood, just not to the standard that we would hope for. But as always, there are people who will always vote no. We will never pass this on a 50-0 margin. We think there's somewhere between 6 and 10 people who will never vote for that. So I think you're Ray Lopez's of the world. So, realizing that it was a bad time, we went to the state because the state loves to dunk on the city, and we got a much better reception in the state house than we did in the city. So because we are working at the state level, that only means that we can do a specific amount of it. That doesn't mean the state can't really force Chicago to build out a specific bike lane. That's not really how they like to legislate either. They are not trying to go over the city's head by any means. So we took a look at our ordinance and we said, what can we get done at the city level? And I mentioned earlier that we need to do 18 months of planning. So our original vision there was that we were going to get the state to pass the planning part of the bill. And it was actually a benefit because we could make use of CMAP, the Metropolitan Agency for Planning, rather than having CDOT do the plan. It also allowed us to expand the scope. So rather than focus only on the city, we were able to incorporate communities on the border, like your Oak Park and your Evanston's. Because if you notice, a lot of those bike networks don't actually line up. And in the same way that your neighborhood trip doesn't start and end in your neighborhood, sometimes you are going over the border and to a different neighborhood. It's not defined by these political borders. So we picked up a bike champion, Mike Simmons, to help us file the bill. It was a very easy process, but we actually made it to committee. I got a subject matter hearing. It ended up in the appropriations committee, which I think surprised us a little bit, but that actually made our life easier over the transportation committee, just by who is on that, who is in there. So we both convinced, wrote, filed, testified, and got multiple co-sponsors. Chris mentioned that we had a very good reception from all the Chicago representatives, and that proved very true. We got 4 co-sponsors to add to our bill just from one day of lobbying down there. It was very easy to convince people to sign on. They understand what that concept is. They hear all the time how much traffic violence happens in their district. Also, a benefit of working at the state level for our own bills that allows us to advocate for a lot of different things. So the one we like to highlight is the Idaho stop, which allows you to yield at a stop sign rather than making a complete stop, and also try to work to change the intended versus permitted rule. If you're not familiar with that, Illinois is the only state where you can be a permitted user of a road, meaning you're allowed to use it. But if you get hurt on that road, especially for poor pavement or any sort of condition, the city is not liable for it. This really came to a head in 2021 when somebody who picked up a bike at a Divvy station on Leland Avenue in Lincoln Square, they got hurt on that Leland Avenue. And despite the Divvy station being there, because the city hadn't provided any official documentation or said that this is a bike route, the city was not liable despite the Divvy station. So we're the only one like that. So it's another thing that we can also work to overturn when we are at the state level. But a few more photos from our lobby day. Our good boy, Senator Mike Simmons. Talk about what's next. Yeah, Saul's going to come up and talk about what we're doing next as we sort of get people plugged in and how you all can help us.
Hello, everybody. How's it going? All right, I'm going to be talking about what's next, specifically the politicking section. So the whole goal of our organization is to get the bike grid that we deserve. And in order for us to do that, we have some political goals for 2027. Obviously, to get the grid, we need to support the Safe Streets movement in the 2027 municipal elections, engage with candidates and electeds around bike safety, and then build a coalition of electeds, community organizations, and partners. So I just want to say we don't endorse or promote specific candidates. We encourage and publicize candidates who endorse our vision. And then we're using our allies in the political system that are doing more direct support of candidates, like the Bike Pack. Woo! And then finally, we're going to target anti-bike electeds or candidates through direct action, which is bike jams, die-ins, and some other things that we have planned. And you can help plan too. So for politicking, we're going to need to build a coalition, and these are some of the things that we've been doing. We've been having scheduled meetings with electeds to talk about the grid. We want to talk to state level people, county level people, and city level people, as you've seen. We want to find and support local champions for our legislation. And we want to engage with community partners around pedestrian and cycling safety. These are some of the things that we've done: coalition rides, bike repair workshops, a lot of informational events. And now we have communications with Charna? Oh, okay. So yeah, for comms, we're gonna need to support our movement and our idea. We have to get our information out there. So we want to make more short form and long form content. We want to make more graphics. We want to do more press releases. We have some stickers, but we'd love to have more sticker design and more interviews with press. Oops. All right. Alyssa's going to talk about Safe Streets Unions. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Yay. Go Sahal. Thank you. Hi, I'm Alyssa. I'm also on the steering committee at Bike Grid. And I'm going to talk about Safe Streets Unions. I'm pulling up my notes. So Safe Streets Unions are sort of an offshoot of Bike Grid. They started, I want to say, in 2023 as sort of a ward-specific organizing mechanism. So these are more pedestrian forward. As you can see from the name, Safe Streets Unions doesn't actually say bikes. That's politically helpful, since it can be politically unpopular to be talking about bike lanes all the time. Also, pedestrians are very much part of the same goal, same vision, and it's important to kind of keep that front and center, especially at a hyper-local level. Why have Safe Streets Unions if we already have Bike Grid now? The biggest thing the biggest difference is that these are neighborhood led. So having community members lead these groups, people who already have relationships with alders, other neighbors and other coalitions in the neighborhood, helps to kind of further that sustainability in the long term. So a lot of so for example, our bike jams, we'll go to a place that we're really mad, and do a protest there and talk to the alder about it, and rile people up, but then we leave, and we do a bike jam somewhere else. The Safe Streets Unions stay. So these are folks that kind of keep that fight going in the long term. They can become sort of sustainable, self-sustaining and autonomous. Also super helpful for counter strikes. Anybody here mad about the Archer Guardians or Claudio Zuno? Yeah. So our Safe Streets Union in the 12th Ward has been amazing at sort of going toe to toe with them, and have been able to really not only mobilize neighbors to literally do counter protests, but also to engage with Alder Ramirez. And doing that is actually really helpful a lot of the time because these alders need political cover. When they have people like that who are really loud in their wards, they need people who are also neighbors and people who are their constituents saying, actually, no, we don't all agree that we need 2 lanes, or whatever it is. The 11th Ward SSU, I also want to shout out. They've been doing amazing work. That's the picture on top. So I think probably a lot of people here were at the Riley, Diane, and Memorial. The 11th Ward since then has been organizing on a daily, weekly basis to keep that work going. They are having meetings with Alderwoman Lee, literally right now. That is how good they are. And oh yeah, it's Wednesday. And they are working closely with Bridgeport Alliance. So that's a good example of the coalition building, as well as several other groups in the neighborhood. So SSUs can be really helpful for those specific fights, as well as those long-term fights. So we want to have more of them. Shout out Streets Vlog for this photo. Also, this one is from the 36th Ward. So there are areas where we already have some folks who are doing organizing, the Grand Ave, people who've been organizing out there on a weekly basis, I think, for months. But that's an area where maybe they could use some more support and have some more coalition work that can help kind of formalize that work and further it to make it more sustainable. Other places we're thinking about, 32nd Ward, 33rd, 50th Ward, want your ideas. If you have an area that like you live in that you want to start a Safe Streets Union, talk to me. 3rd and 9th Ward, thank you. Oh, yeah, okay, thank you. And yeah, so how to help? We are basically, all of the things that we've talked about, we are forming subcommittees around. So rides, but also comms, politicking, the SSUs I just talked about, and organizing work. Back to you, Chris, or who goes next? Oh, back to next.
Yeah, so I'll be running the ride subcommittee. So this is probably the one of all the 5 that we are best resourced to do, but yet we don't do enough of them. So the rides are the way, as Chris mentioned, that we show up and we literally just take up space, but it's also a way to work with a lot of local community groups in the same way that we are trying to form SSUs to highlight their issue. It's a way for us to lend our resources to them. So for example, we are currently in the middle of planning a ride with Mike Simmons around our state bill because we're going to use Rogers Park in Evanston as an example of when you plan to have 2 different bike plans, but they don't line up. And there's about 4 different roads where you will exit Chicago and immediately in Evanston be presented with hell and vice versa. So it also means that we run marshal training. So that is something that we do as a community to give back to the community. We use it for our own rides. We have a lot of people that come to us asking for marshaling. So we try to host about 5 of these per year so we can train people, not in hopes that you join us, but also that you come back to your own community. If you want to do your own ride, you have a foundation for doing that safely in the way that we do. And that's also, and something we're trying to stand up is doing a lot of bike buses to school. Do one bike bus and you'll see how much fun the kids have. We did one in Ravenswood in June, and the first time we showed it, first time we ran it, all the kids who didn't ride their bikes got so excited that they wanted to join their friends the following week. So we did another one in that ride got even larger. Makes them very, yes. And now they're going to start their own one.
Hi, I'm Charna. I'm also on the steering committee for Biker Now. And so you can tell from this long and informational presentation that we do many different things with Biker Now, and we need a way to get this information out. And also just to bring it out and refocus it a little bit. The purpose in doing this big information session is that we want to kind of impose some more order on our organization and mainly recruit more volunteers and feature leaders. And so one way we're planning to do that is by breaking into formal committees. So rides will be one of them. Comms will be another. What you'll do as part of the comms committee is, oh, we need help with so many different things. Graphic design for social media posts. We're exploring our pivot to video with making short content, as you may have seen on Instagram before this meeting. We need to restart our organizational newsletter, our action network for when, imagine some anti-bike legislation comes up and we need to get the word out quickly to oppose it or support pro-bike legislation. We need people who can work on our website. We need to reactivate our link tree with links to all of these different things. And we're always trying to make cool merch. Like we have one idea for a t-shirt that we've been planning for forever. I'm not going to ruin it, but we will be making that and we could use your help. So if you are a graphic design person of any kind or a social media person, we need someone to help with all of those things, and especially someone who'll be better at running our Instagram than I am. I will preface this by saying we're going to be splitting into smaller groups after this to discuss joining those committees. Do you just press the thingy? Yeah. Oh, that is not how you do it. Are you going to talk about politicking? Yeah. So these are all committees.
Yeah, so the politicking committee or the comms committee communications is led by Charna, as you just saw, and then politicking I'm going to be leading, and we're going to be doing strategy and research around like what we want to do as an organization. We want to organize the alder meetings that we were talking about before for the city council members, and then more meetings with CDOT potentially. Also, we want to try to work with the groups that already exist that are doing work around pedestrian and cycling safety and build our coalitions around that. So if you're interested in politicking, let me know. You can talk to me. If you're interested in communications, you can talk to Charna. Yes. And Safe Streets Unions. Alyssa will talk about.
Yeah, so Safe Streets Unions just talked about, but recruiting new members, trying to figure out where we want to start them, and organizing ward by ward. And then we need an organizing committee, which Chris is gonna lead because he is the best talker and obviously, no offense to any of the rest of us, orienting new folks. There's just 5 of us. It's hard to bring new people in. It takes a lot of work. And so doing those one-on-ones, figuring out orientation structures, this is a great place to start tabling if you're interested in that. Just going out to, different neighborhood events and talking about how we need a bike grid, and doing some internal comms. So I think we're gonna break into groups now, yeah? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, first of all, in general, we'll talk about this afterward, and if you're online, fill this out.
Yeah, fill out the interest form online because we're gonna break into groups after this. Yeah.
Also do that, or you can do it when we group out.
Yeah. I don't know what I did.
All right.
Oh.
I guess before we break out proper, are there any questions about where we came from, what we're doing, what our plan is, how we get there, insults, gripes, general complaints, vibes? What you got? Okay, off the top of my head, we have Raymond Lopez for Scherzies, Quinn for Scherzies, retiring. He's gone. We'll see how that one works. Oh my God, Nugent for Scherzies, Gardner. Actually, Gardner is actually on my unknown list. He's not on my for Scherzies no list. I'm pretty sure he's a no. Oh man, I have a spreadsheet. There's a spreadsheet. This is off the top of my head at the moment. There's a spreadsheet that we track all this at. Yeah. But there's also some maybes. There's some maybes and yeses that you wouldn't expect. But yeah. Any other questions, thoughts, vibes? Yeah, what you got? That's what our state bill's about. Yeah, agreed. This is kind of why the state bill exists as well, not just as a mechanism to pass the city bill, but also because genuinely the city doesn't end at the border, right? You bike from Chicago to Oak Park. It's not like you've left the country, right? You're in the same place still. So yeah, that's one of the reasons the state bill is not just a good idea because the city bill is hard to pass. It's also a good idea because the state bill should also exist. Hell yeah, all the time. So this is when I talk about coalition building and the coalitions we need to take to pass this, I'm not just talking bikes, right? Because if we have to rely on just bike groups to pass the bike grid, it ain't gonna happen, right? We have to, in fact, if anything, we need to rely more heavily. And one of the goals of using SSUs is to be able to engage with more non-bike entities, right? We know that, for example, some of our maybes and our we think yes aldermans are coming out of not out of a I think the bike grid is good, out of a I want kids to get to school safe, right? I think this it's things like that we think are really useful ways of engaging, because at our best, if you take the most generous data we have that argues for how many people are biking on a weekly basis, it suggests so I think this is probably not even real information data, but in theory, it says 18% is the most generous data you can find. That's only 18%. That's not enough, right? And so you have to be able to get, how do we expand why we're talking about the bike grid besides just people biking to work? It's also getting around their neighborhood. It's also engaging with kids and old folks. And I actually hadn't thought about ER docs because that's a great idea we should be doing more of. It's environmentalists. It's about like, how do we expand not just out of, hey, I'm a biker that is mad, but how do we expand to the people that think that biking and safety for kids and old folks and getting around the neighborhood, et cetera, are all just like objectively good things. There's also some like pro bike chambers of commerce that we can talk with, et cetera, et cetera. So like the coalition itself needs to be beyond just bike groups. Yeah.
He would know how to get a hold.
Facts. I should have known that. Yeah. Vibes. Yeah.
But I'm just about like, so I live in Angelo State.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are other like we get, but like not really most
Yeah.
excited about my work. So like what
So first of all, there's a need for safe streets unions everywhere, right? So we have priorities we want to try to focus on setting new ones up at because we think there's a particularly either a no or there's a particularly like vocal anti-bike movement. For example, right, what's going on in the 12th ward, we have a really pro-bike alderman, right? But we have a really vocal anti-bike movement taking place, right? There's other anti-bike organizing going on in like Logan Square, for example, where we have pretty pro-bike aldermen, but like a pretty vocal opposition that's forming, and we want to make sure we have counters to that. On top of that, even when we have pro-bike elected, say Lakeview, right? We want to push them more. We want to make them go from cool, they're a yeah, but we want them to actually pick up the mantle and like run with it, right? So anywhere that we can, anywhere there's not organizing currently going on, we want to help start those unions out. But there are also places where we don't need to start unions, right? Like Lakeview Urbanist exists. We don't need to start a SSU in Lakeview, right? They're doing that work already. Gage Park Cyclists exists. We don't need to start an SSU in Gage Park. They exist. We should be supporting those efforts instead. But where there's a gap in organizing, where there isn't someone putting together bikes and pedestrians and talking about those issues, we want to help build out that coalition. We have priorities for where we as a committee want to like focus our attention. But anywhere that you're like, hey, no one's doing this in my ward right now, hell yeah, let's make it happen, right? Because like fundamentally at its core, SSUs are pretty autonomous. We don't really, they kind of do their own thing. We're kind of helping to try to start them and then like let them fly off on their own. So like if you want help, and we're trying to help provide some support because starting a new thing is terrifying. Starting a new thing, especially if you're like, I'm a baby organizer, I don't know what I'm doing. As someone that was a baby organizer, it's really helpful to have folks behind you to be able to lend you marshals and support and plan rides and help with socials and graphics and whatever to get you off the feet. And so this is kind of the goal of the SSU committee, is to be able to help folks that want to start those things get off the ground and be successful. Crazy idea. What do we do in winter? First of all, we know that like doing big scaled rides in winter is hard. Sometimes we still do it. Sometimes it still happens, right? But one, there's still lots of organizing that needs to be done during the winter. In fact, if anything, that's when I almost think about you have like ride season, you have organizing season. Organizing season is winter, right? That's when we want to have meetings with electeds. That's when we want to build that coalition. That's when we want to make content, engage with bike shops, engage with allies, because we want to be able to come out in the summer and be like, okie dokie, everybody that's just a summer rider, you're cool too. Come hang out with us. I'm an idiot that bikes all year long. But like for those that aren't, we want to be able to take that time during the winter to build up infrastructure, build up organizing so that we can come out in the spring all engines flaring, metaphorically, because we don't have engines. That 10%, okay, so the 10% number comes from the 2015 bike plan, which basically says that anyone that bikes more than 4 times a week, not people that use biking as their primary form of transportation. That number, where that started, to be honest, that's, yeah. Yeah, so the number of people that use biking as their primary form of transportation is like 2 to 3%, right? There was a survey that was part of the 2015 bike study that suggests that people self-proclaim that they bike 4+ times a year. It's like 9.8% or something like that. So that's where that number comes from. There's like it makes the slogan pretty simple, which is why we use it. But the actual number of people that are biking year round is probably somewhere between like 1 and 3. But in terms of like, but we also think that we should build infrastructure for people no matter what. And that when you build the infrastructure, more people do it. And therefore we use the 10% number. Yeah. Yeah. Very explicitly, we are not going to preserve Prosomat, right? For lots of reasons. One, I'm not an expert in your community. I'm not going to pretend like I am. None of us are. And nor am I a planner. I'm not a city planner. I'm not an urban planner. I'm not going to pretend like I am. And also, I don't want to have that battle. I don't want to have the fight of, oh my God, you want to put a bike lane on this road? Can you believe that? I don't want to have that fight. I want to leave that fight up to the experts. So that's kind of the purpose of the planning period. So when we talk about our legislation, we often talk about we often have these periods of consultation when we're doing any kind of bike project. Our goal is to do all of that all at once. Instead of having, oh my God, we got a ward meeting and we talked about this half mile for 3 years and we finally built it, right? We want to have that. We want to have those organizing and planning meetings and like where alders and community members are talking about where should we put these roads? What is a good place to put the lane? How should we do that best? We think those should be happening in wards and in communities. We think that aldermen should be part of that process. We're not going to dictate where those roads are, but we're going to dictate that those roads exist. That's kind of the line we're saying. It's like we're going to say you have to build them, but like we think that it's up to wards to figure out what the best place to put them, how to connect to the grid well, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's kind of the point of the planning period in the grid. Also, because I really don't want to fight about specific roads because that's just a way to drag out everything.
Yeah, we're gonna have our.
Yeah, they're smarter people than me. I'm just a little guy. Any other burning questions, concerns, insults?
I can't talk using a mic or your phone.
Probably those Joes. I honestly have no idea either. I'm a loud boy. There's collaboration with a lot of advocacy groups, and we would love to collaborate with all of them that we possibly can. I think that we particularly engage really heavily with groups like Active Transit Alliance. We're going to be supporting really heavily bike packs folks who are in the room. We're going to if anything, doing our best to offload a lot of our municipal planning to them this year and support what they're doing. So there's a lot of we think it's really important to engage with a lot of those groups. We meet pretty regularly with a lot of other bike groups. So yeah. Any other burning questions? Cool. If not, then what part of this meeting is, besides just being here to like explain what the heck we've been up to, who we are, what we're doing, is if you're interested in actually getting involved, with us, this is kind of what this is here for, right? This organization, we're just a bunch of volunteers. That this org runs on somewhere between 8 and 12 people at any given moment. And we managed to pull off a surprising amount of things. But also we could pull up way more stuff if we had more than just 8 to 12 of us, depending on the given moment. And so like, for example, we have lots and lots of rides we want to do. And also I'm sure you have rides you want to do, because oftentimes I'm planning rides on the stuff that makes me mad. And I'm sure there's also stuff making you mad too. We're doing politicking. It's often based off of, cool, I know the Southwest side really, really well. I don't probably know the ins and outs of Jefferson Parkland, as I know there are folks that do, right? And so part of the goal is bringing more folks into this work. This doesn't have to take a lot of your time. Literally, this all just runs on whatever speed we all have to do this on. I awkwardly have another job as an actual organizer doing something completely different, right? I organize both for my job and my hobby. But like, so this runs at whatever speed this wants to run at. If you're like, hey, cool, I can't do much, but like I can maybe like help with a ride every so often, sick, come hang out. You're like, cool, like I don't want to actually ever be in front of people. That's terrifying. But like, I know how Instagram works, sick. Because like basically none of us on the steering committee actually use Instagram. Which is kind of one of our recurring bits. Like if you're like someone who is like, cool, like I don't want to like ever like run a ride, but I'm down to go be bad at my alderman. Cool, great, so am I. Come hang out, right? So there's a place for all of you, no matter what amount of time you have or amount of like desire or capacity you have to actually be doing stuff. Right? Because there's a movement, this all takes all of us to do this. Not even just us in this room, but like the broader bike community. If we're gonna have the infrastructure that we deserve, it takes more than just 8 to 12 of us, depending on the given moment. So the goal of this, if you're interested, what we're gonna do after this in a second is we're gonna kind of talk about what these committees actually do. What does it take to plan a ride? What does it take to make SSUs happen? Where should we be doing those things? How do comms actually even work in the first place? Who knows? I don't know how that works in the slightest. So what we're going to do after this is, if you're interested and want to be more involved, first of all, let's actually put this back up here. What we're going to do after this meeting, both at any point in time, you can fill this out. And one of the questions is going to be, hey, are you interested in joining any of these subcommittees? And you can say, yeah. And then some point in the next month or so, those of us that are heading these things up are going to be like, hey, so you want to do that still? And then we're going to make that happen. But to explain what those things are, right after, in like 10 seconds or so, we're going to kind of split into two sessions of, we're going to take up two of the breakout, we're going to talk about two of the committees, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about two other committees. And just like, what does that look like? What kinds of things do you think it should look like? Because again, we're just some homies that got really mad about bike stuff like 3 years ago. We don't inherently know more than most of you do, right? And so like, I want your knowledge on things as well.
Cool. So people interested, we're gonna do first politicking, and also comms. And so you'll have the opportunity to like kind of pick two of the things that you're interested in. Politicking is gonna be upstairs, comms is gonna be downstairs. We'll talk for like, I don't know, 15 minutes or so. And then we'll switch. So then we're gonna have SSUs upstairs, that's the Safe Streets Unions. And we'll have rides downstairs. So right now, just pick between politicking and comms. And again, yeah, comms down here, politicking upstairs. Sahal and I are going to do politicking. Sahal, Nick, and I are going to do politicking, so you can follow us. And Charna and Chris are going to do comms, as well as talk a little bit about organizing down here.
And last thing, if you are on the online Zoom, I'm sorry, we only have one computer and I didn't want to deal with breakout rooms. But if you get the vibes. So if you're interested, fill out the form. I'll leave this up for now. Thank you. All right, cool. Yeah. All right, if you want to learn about politicking and talking to your elected and organizing, go upstairs. If you're like, bro, what the heck is an election? I don't know. Come hang out down here. We'll talk about communication and how to make people actually listen to us. Lots of that. Yeah. It's funny is like Instagram, but important. I think I did not come to my left. I got some friends until I became elected. You know, that's kind of that's kind of how it works. But I think you know. And I've heard about you for years, but I don't know. Your name get past You're running against I'm aware. I'm rooting for you. I'm not Jackson.
How do you understand?
I spent most of my life doing electoral housing. Most of my career spent doing like yeah, I get the challenge. I get You and me, Chris Army, 6 years, military police officer. Now that's be mad about. Yeah. Here we all in the basement. Yeah. Yeah. I want to target. Weirdly, the objective like meeting that happens. Weirdly bizarre. Didn't hate us.
Yeah. You know,
Oh, okay.
some scared him on Sunside Island by driving around too fast and now he's. This is 38 Ford Alderman. Next word over.
Yeah, you're right. So what you're saying is we need to organize the terrified.
Yes, terrified, terrified. Yeah.
Oh yeah, look, so we should do it, yeah, look, sounds great. We're a big fan. Yeah. Definitely have.
I want to do
Yeah.
I want to be.
All right.
Liver fleet, ooh.
Oh no, I've got nothing.
I get stressed how important that actual whole yard. I get stressed how important, but we should still fill it out. Like, literally, we already become more organized than we have ever been.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How much of your actual organizing happens on like?
Absolutely.
Okay, so it might actually be possible for me.
At this immediate moment, all of our organizing is occurring, I think.
Okay. I'm actually on that.
We are contemplating trying to fix that. To make, but like at the immediate moment, all of our organizing is occurring on Signal, and part of the organizing half of this is figuring out what kind of things we want to be using, because the Slack died. If you're around the old days, the Slack died. You let the Slack die, and now we're like,
Now we don't do that. We used to use Slack, it was very active for a while, but like kind of the way everyone's brainstormed who is running the organization now, like none of us really think that way. We don't like a lot of things paying us at once. I don't know, maybe I'm sleeping.
no, it's fine.
We couldn't keep up with it, and like we have jobs where we have to come drink and stuff, so like it didn't work out, and some people stopped listening to it, and so we kind of, part of this is, as Chris said, trying to figure out like how do people want to internally and externally, like what does, so we're kind of thinking of a more federated like committee model where we actually have meetings, be like once a month, and on the tasks and organizing the whole fashion way. Honestly, I need Slack, so.
Because
to be kind of
direct, the last year or two, our organizing has essentially been done by like, we just know a lot of people now, and we just go, hey, we're doing a thing, call up the gang. And we think that as the scale has increased, we probably need to like have a model that's not just, hey, call up the gang, let's go do a thing.
Yeah, but anyway, I thought we could start it by like making some great shows. Great say, your meeting, your board / think of it, and maybe like what prompts things to your thing, you don't have to have something, but you know, if you're like deciding pieces or seeking gifts, whatever. And then also maybe like what pieces as well. So I'm Charna, I like writing. And I've been exploring in college, and the section is corners of the river. I'm right vision, but he's also he's good at reflecting. He can contribute that every don't need to do it. Just need to know. I think so yeah.
My name is Lucas, on here selling in Chicago. There's one thing that I think is that is today. Who's here? I'm actually probably giving.
Yeah, you're right. That's okay.